Hello, everybody. Today I hope to be finishing off the Coldest War canon, and we'll be starting off with Cleon. Let me just get you the visuals. There we go. All right. Cleon, Rome, 1955. Gerlato Mordetti ran as the fanged walls of the alleyway closed in behind him. The droning sound that followed him grew into a roar. Crumpled paper drifted through the air, despite the lack of any breeze. In front of him, miles ahead, he could see a dim glow that promised salvation. How had he come here? He tried to remember. There had been a dinner on the train, a night outside no light could penetrate, a party, a knowledge of creatures in blackness on the other side of the wall, a superstitious nod from one of the men. He could see the sequence play out on the tracks that filled the air. Morty ran faster. As he neared the light, all electrical blue and red, he could feel the alleyway hungrily snapping at his feet. People now filed into the narrow passage, emerging from the from the brick walls on the other side. Their faces, when they had them, were all wrong, mistaken. Morady tried to pass through them, or move past them, but a man with 5 eyes and no mouth grabbed at him, smearing his clothes all over his arm. The other men began to grab at him, smearing the cloth into his body. They came over him in waves, their skin clammy and burning hot. As the men washed over him, he could feel himself grow weaker. Slower and slower, he moved as his skin turned gray. Finally, his weight was too much for his legs to bear, and he collapsed. The men with the mistaken faces descended, turned his flesh into chunks. Looking up, Morty saw that the neon lights on the head of the alley blinked off one by one. The alley roared in triumph as teeth overtook him. The inky blackness inside of it began to squeeze at him, and Goraldi Morty opened his eyes. He was standing in the gallery again. In front of him was a painting with the drips of paint and God knows what else that led him to the dream. He tried to stop the shaking in his hands, failed, and tried to focus on other things. The review he had to write tomorrow on this exhibition, Rome, with its ancient and endless solid buildings. The dry conversations of materialists and the thrust of history he and Maria share over long nights and many cigarettes. Everything seemed poisonous to him. The dream that had been so real, this Warrens Greer, his work, was like nothing Morty saw had ever experienced. He had tasted the fear. He had felt his skin ripped apart. He made his way to the exit, looking around the gallery. He saw other patrons staring at the dozen or so other works. Some seemed to be in a trance, perhaps like the one he had just been in. Others simply looked awestruck. He was still shaking. Standing in the basement entrance to the gallery, in the dark night, Morty checked to make sure no one was coming. Then for the first time since the war ended, he began to cry. Rio de Janeiro, 1958. The stuttering light on the screen illuminated Carla Carvalho's face. She could almost feel it as it moved over and around her in the dark basement. It seemed to mingle with the heat that filled every centimeter of air in the theater. Before her, a dark boy and a light girl walked hand in hand, oblivious to the garbage surrounding them. The room was silent except for the whir of the projector and the occasional cough. Then, all at once, she sensed music. It seemed to well up within her, filling every centimeter of her. Great expansive notes, one so small and subtle that she could scarcely notice them, others she couldn't even imagine hearing. Indeed, she realized that there still wasn't any sound other than the projector. For a moment she was taken aback to the time she had first danced with a boy, all those years back, in Sao Paulo, during Carnival. During a moment of remembering, with his hands had felt like on her arms. She returned to the movie. The couple were now looking into one another's eyes. The music within her swelled with Saturine, Saturine strings, so she thought. In some gag where the soundtrack is produced internally. Ho-hum, nothing more than a cheap novelty. So much for the American anomalous cinema. Rita had promised her that Greensboro Yellow was worth seeing. But if sound without sound was all that the creator could think of, Carlo would need to reevaluate the list of people she went to for advice. Someone in the audience gasped, staring Carla from her reflection, her eyes there around the screen, looking for something that would draw a gasp. Nothing. Just a couple dancing again, but now a dog had wandered into the frame, limping slightly. Carla wanted to groan. She could be at home practicing her sigils, or at the university, or at the graveyard again, or anywhere, really. That wasn't dark and filled with easily impressed morons. The screen had shifted, now to the narrow street of favela. Odd, but not particularly interesting. This shift drew another gasp, this time from a different viewer. Morons. She was gathering her things to go when she saw the couple dancing across the street again, in black and white. Their skin colors were now switched, with a dark girl and a light boy, just like the boy at the carnival all those years ago. Carla squinted. Wait, no, that wasn't just like the boy at the carnival. It was the boy from the carnival. She gasped, despite herself, seeing her younger self mimic the moves she had danced with the light-skinned boy half a lifetime ago. She felt the music She felt the music of that day, a dozen melodies rising and falling against one another. The couple danced, and the boy whispered something to the girl's ear. Carla had never made out what the boy had said in his rough Marano accent. Only his ahs and chs rose above the noise of the carnival. The music overwhelmed her as the couple danced and danced and danced and danced. Finally, the music died down as the couple's rhythm slowed and then stopped. The boy made a friendly smile as he had done those 20 years ago and kissed the young Carla in the cheek. The Carla in the theater cried out, wanting to ask a million questions to the light boy on the screen. The other viewers looked at her, startled. She had never seen him again after that day. Where did he go? What was your life like? Did you dance with another girl that night? The light boy on the screen waved at the young Carla. Then he walked out of her life, forever. The music was almost imperceptible. Carla clenched her fist so hard that she could feel pain in her wrist. She wanted to yell, to stomp her feet, and curse the director and the boy, and the idiots gawking at one of her most cherished memories. Carla on the screen stood, dazed and smiling, on the sidewalk. Then she began to skip. As she did, the young girl began to change. She grew taller and her hair grew straighter. The music around her grew flightier. When she finished skipping, arriving at a played great building with a palm tree in front, the girl was no longer Carla. She looked almost identical to one of the women in the audience now. There was a gasp. Carla turned just in time to see a woman's jaw drop as she saw her doppelganger on screen. Carla sat through the rest of the film, watching the half-digested memories of the audience stitch themselves into a narrative. She sat as married and broken wrist. She sat as marriages and broken wrists and spilled rice played out on screen, as the music played within her. But she never saw the boy again. Cotonou, 1962. The air of the exhibition seemed to wrap itself around Ewanza. Ewansiha Soklo, strangling him. The small elite of Cotonou had gathered here in this small, nondescript building near the heart of the city, to be seen. A half-dozen conversations, all in French, wove their way between the well-dressed patrons. Ewansiha avoided the conversations, not because he couldn't partake, he reminded himself, but because he was too profane a thinker to be caught up in these gossip. Ever since the day where his professor had introduced him to the book of Marx in the brown paper wrapper, he had seen the world as it truly was. Everything, from religion to the anomalous art, was superstructure. So let the well-dressed idiots prattle on about their petty feuds. Ewanza could see where the world was heading, and knew he was on the right side of history. He moved from exhibit to exhibit, having decided to stay just long enough to be seen. A series of photographs had caused him to taste the color blue. A guitar that gave off the sound of a dozen songs played simultaneously, ho-hum. Ewanza came to a grotesque statue in the corner of the room, all twisted metal stretching upwards towards the ceiling. It was by far the ugliest object in the gallery. Ewanza could make out dozens of faces contorting in grimace. Whether from pain or amusement, he couldn't tell. Typical descendant American garbage. Ewanza thought as he turned to leave. He blinked, and the world fell apart. The elegant conversations in studiously accented French morphed into the yapping of dogs. He looked round at the other patrons and saw that they no longer had mouths or eyes. He tried to remember where he was. The most holy Dahomey Empire, he remembered, under the enlightened rule of Maurice the Fifth. Maurice the 14th. These foul creatures were nothing but half-made beings, cobbled together from unmade potions of humans. There is nothing to fear from them. He turned to the grotesque statue, a monument to one of Maurice's predecessors. He blinked again. The air ran thick with ropes of words. Elwanza could see the contours of conversations flowing from the patrons' mouths, the words skittering through the gallery, pulling the sentences into a pile at the center of the room. He couldn't remember where he was anymore. Just the contours of the country, the city, the neighborhood he was in. Only the statue was solid. Elwanza blinked again, and the world was remade. And again, and again, and again. Finally, he stepped away from the statue, and the world was as it had been. He was Elwanza's Sokolo. Once again, he was in Benin, Canton, specifically. These patrons were nothing but fascists' gits. History had a direction, one that he was hoping to guide in his small way. He moved away from the statue that had remade the world again and again. He wasn't scared, he reminded himself. Just wanted to experience the other so-called art here. Just as he looked at the paintings that moved and sculptures that sang, he couldn't stop thinking about the ugly statue. 2 months ago, he had been in an exhibition with the Soviet Union. The anomalies, such as they were, merely filled him with proliferation, pride, prolentation, proletarian pride, and made him feel as though he was riding the first tractor at a proud kolkhoz, committing communism, though he may have been. Elwanza had to admit that he would not remember the Soviet work for in a year's time. But this descendant American piece, he would be puzzling over it for years to come. Top secret. Access to this document is limited to those persons cleared for this specific subject. B.G. Maurice Lyle, Colonel Jasper A. Hunt, Colonel Thomas Callahan, LTC Anthony Andrisi, Major Aaron H. Sutton. Memorandum to the Overseers of Project Cleon, 380th Independent Special Company. Subject: the efficiency of parascientific arts funding. From Major Stephen M. Jacoby. Since its inception in 1953, the work of Project Cleon has been first to identify American citizens engaging in the use of scientific materials and methods to produce works of art, and second, to covertly fund and foster the work of these individuals, particularly with regards to international exhibition. By fostering such works of art, the goal of the project has been to effect a greater respect for American culture and society among members of the parascientific community, giving the 388th Independent Special Company a deeper pool from which to draw potential talent in the struggle against international communism. 10 years on, Project Cleon has been highly successful in this regard. 157 exhibitions of American parascientific artwork have been funded, traveling to nearly every country not under direct communist control. Favorable write-ups of these exhibitions have been written in a variety of widely read parascientific periodicals, such as Planas Thai, and numerous intelligence sources indicate that American art is held in high regard for its creativity and vitality. In the first year of the project alone, the 388th Independent Special Company was able to recruit over 80 new intelligence assets from the parascientific community worldwide, more than the past 5 years put together. In addition to the improved perception of America in works of potential future conflict, Project Leon has yielded more tangible benefits. The work of many parascientific artists, either utilizing techniques from that may be useful in future weapons research, or may itself be used as a weapon. Most notably, the sculpture Untitled 17 by Gerald Saito has, when handled properly, repeatedly yielded det- mm, has, when handled properly, repeatedly yielded detonations in excess of 2.3 kilotons, while some experiments have yielded suboptimal results. See incident critias. The overall research into the weaponization of these phenomena remains promising. Project Cleon has proved to be extremely efficient in achieving its stated goals and has provided the 388th Independent Special Company with additional unforeseen benefits. Therefore, I strongly recommend the indefinite continuation of the project. And that was Cleon. I'll take a short break and then move on to the next tale, Misnomer. So I'll be right back. let's move on to the next one. This one is Misnomer. Site 23, Delhi, India, November 22nd, 1956. And this is why I stress the importance of remaining neutral in this conflict. Alignment with either of the major powers would be a deep insult to those whose great sacrifices, earned us our freedom. You may have noticed that despite the sentiment of some of my other writings, I have chosen here to stress that we should become no more cozy with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic than with the United States of America, without meaning any insult to their meaning without meaning any insult to their cause or organization of the society. It would not be in the best interest of our fledgling nation to spit on our hard-won independence, aligning ourselves too readily with either superpower. Rather, we must our long-standing racial and your rhetoric is unimpressive, but for a native you have an impressive grasp of the language. Miss Sugmagasundaram, Site Direct Erickson raises an eyebrow from over the torn scrap of paper. Satyana plastered a smile onto her face as she looked up at him from behind the typewriter. You wouldn't have hired me if I didn't, with a hint of sheepishness, and you said you were taking today off. The pale, heavy-set man sighed and pulled up a chair in front of his desk. No, sweet. I can hardly afford to discipline every staff member who engages in political diatribes during working hours. He glanced at the paper again, then glanced back at her. Other writings? Satyana removed the torn sheet of paper from the table and disposed of it. I've written several other editorials for the local English language newspaper. The Hindi ones are acceptable, but this one is usually filled with colonialist propaganda. She smiled wide and slightly, and involuntarily, before she forced it back to its default state. No offense, of course. I'll say it again. I do not get involved in politics. But to address your earlier point, there's far too much work to be done with to take more time off than I had to. He pulled out a packet of cigarettes and lit one, taking a short drag before continuing. We still lack a definitive category of everything we managed to evacuate, and we only have the personal shortage to think of for this arrangement. Satyana stubbed out her own cigarette into the ashtray on her desk. I'm aware, on the topic, you have mail. Matsuyama took a folder from her desk and handed it to Erickson. Two things at this site, and as usual. Your position entitles you to recover information from other parts of the Foundation. Erickson Erickson accepted the file and opened to the first page with a frown of resignation. No doubt your position as my secretary entitles you to the same information. Somehow. Just be aware that I overlook it as a favor. Satyana nodded. As you wish. First order of business? Some Soviet munitions that have been traded for 3 days ago. Not fully written up yet. Initial reports are that they make trees after exploding. She handed another file to Erickson. Bombs that make trees? What the heck are they planning to do with those? He took the file. Seems like it would be counterproductive if you're looking to invade an area, to give the defenders cover. Setiana rolled her eyes. While I prefer to think that they're intended to... You know what? Never mind. She made this to set the file aside. No, go ahead. Give me your spiel and send him to Hall. I think he's technically an explosives expert. Noted. She returned to attention. And I was going to say that it looked to me like the... She looked at the file again. Tannin bombs are a foray into increasing agricultural production. Isn't that what the collective farms were for? If I had to guess, it would be if they were on the run. If the Americans took Stalingrad, it'd be a lot less useful to them if it were a forest. Possibly, but I don't feel that anything approaching an invasion would benefit either party. They wouldn't invest this level of resources on such an unlikely event. Unlikely? Hardly. Either they'll drop bombs, or skips, or bomb skips, or whatever. Then they'll swarm in to spread democracy or communism or whatever it is. Given the ideological and economic disparity, it's actually not very likely that the ordeal will be settled by combat rather than words. There's been some rather insightful analysis. Erickson waved a hand to cut her off. I have more important things to attend to than vague strategic treaties, and so do you. Is there anything else? Satya blinked, a bit put off. Understood. The next order of business would be skip 1427. We recovered it from Soviets before they tried to destroy it with an atomic bomb. I, for one, think it's horrendously misdocumented. But it should only affect us in a worse... Misdocumented? He scanned through the file. Everything seems to be in order to me. Yes. Second paragraph of the Special Containment Procedures. Habitually subjugated or otherwise politically oppressed individuals, such as those under communist rule, are ideal for containment of SCP 1427. Erickson yawned heavily and straightened up in his chair. Yes, I read that. I failed to see how its objectionability given the document's effects on the anomaly. Well, Satya asked, it would hardly be accurate to call concern for your fellow workers or your loyalty to a greater cause subjugation and oppression. And they're even acting like it's some sort of great war dilemma to keep it contained. I'm not so sure they see it that way. The tone of the statement warned against arguing that particular point. Satyana opened her mouth, then closed it. When she spoke again, her demure manner was obviously forced. Whatever you or the authors of the document may feel about the political implications, the bias is transparent for what is supposedly an apolitical organization. It says here that it's a Site 81. Most of their bosses are French. If Duran was still in charge there, the sentiment isn't changing anytime soon. and I don't think it's pragmatic to call for the wording of a key or class to get changed, especially the containment procedures. Very well. She allowed herself a frown now. As I was saying, this could only affect us in a worst case scenario. However, 28, 2080 was requested for its potential to damp the effects. It seems rather straightforward, so it just needs your signature. Cross-testing something like this with another skip, even 2080, is risky. Have Galuzzo give it the okay first. I'll make sure of that. Under that's actually being transferred here, skip 1564. It's a broken god artifact. The only instance I believe will be troublesome in -1. Erickson shuffles papers around to examine the relevant documentation. You're right in the account. It's hard enough to transport personnel with military backgrounds across borders, even without the recent scrutinization of all the veterans from NATO and whatever the Soviets are up to. He rubbed his eyes. The Warsaw Pact. I haven't had the time to check our records yet, but if I recall correctly, we have 2 researchers and 3 assistants that fit the requirements, discounting you. Not nearly enough. Get on the horn with logistics. They'll need twice that. Make sure they're not Buddhists first. Logistics, or the researchers. Erickson smiled briefly. Very funny. The researchers. Logistics can light incense and sing kumbaya if that's what keeps them working. But I want to be extra sure that the Tiggers don't try and sneak in any more plans. Noted. That's all that's in your mailbox today. Is there any other official business that needs taken care of? Official business? Nothing. I do have a Konya. I do have a koan I'd like to pass on to you. A pause. Uh, a koan is a saying that makes you think. Oh, let's hear it then. Heard it from Taylor on Tuesday. Just thought of it now. He hemmed. Recalling it as best he could. Why is it called an arms race when to win a race you use your legs? Satyan paused the query for about 15 seconds before responding. Is that supposed to have some sort of hidden meaning? It's just a play on words. Harrison shrugged. Hell if I know. Just something I thought worth hearing. Happy Thanksgiving to you. He stood up and walked past Satyana's desk into his own office. She turned her head to look quizzically at him as he went. We're not even American, Satyana let out a sigh. And set about calling logistics. Erickson closed his door without explanation. He sat down at his desk and placed a piece of paper back into his typewriter. And I urge the good-hearted, rational citizens of India to realize that simply refusing to align our new country with either power is not enough to keep the forces of tyranny at bay. And that was Misnomer. Once again, I'll be taking a short break to give my voice a bit of a rest. So, hello there, Kazakhs level. Very nice of you to join me. But as I was saying, I'll now be taking a break to let my voice relax. See you soon. Alright, time to move on to the next tale. In the shadow of a high wall. On June 16th, 1963, a team of Foundation agents attempted and failed to recontain the escaped SCP-2030 in West Berlin. The following excerpt is drawn from the debrief of team leader Louis Franklin. The interview was conducted on June 18th, 1963, by Berlin Station Chief Marcel Gunther. Note, certain designations may no longer be accurate. Excerpt begins. Interviewer. Alright, Franklin. We've gone over SCP-2030's escape from the Oslo containment facility and the subsequent pursuit conducted by your field investigation team in some detail. Now, if you'd give more context from the West Berlin account. Franklin. We had just arrived in the city on the morning of the 16th when intelligence notified us about a scheduled meeting between one Agent Montonov, KGB, and a Foundation employee preparing to defect. Only problem was, this supposed defector had been listed as KIA quite recently, and if you read 2030's file, you'll see why that sets off alarms. Our team was half American and half German, a local bunch. We set out on the evening of the 16th to break up the encounter and bag the thing. Antonyov had arranged the meeting at a bar out in Charlottenburg, a small, quiet place. Carlson parked across the street in the sedan with Michaels and Magnetful Tungelman. Magnetful, Tungelman, Conley, and Roberts were stalking out the back way when the automatic rifle. Ludwig and I were tailing Antonova on foot. It was until he got up to the door of the bar that we got a real good look at him and realized just how inexperienced he had to be. Interviewer: what gave you that impression? F: he dressed like he didn't know any better. No gloves or protective glasses, no briefcase for a gas mask or forensic kit. Basics anyone who's working with parasite before would have gone into the field without. But he walked right into that bar, as if he owned the place. It demonstrated to us, at least, that he had no inkling of what he was walking into. Interviewer: how did it proceed once he had entered the building? Ludwig and I checked in with the other two teams after Antonov entered. No sign of our skip, so we took station down the street and waited for about half an hour. Nobody else arrived or left during that time. All of a sudden, Harrison tears out of there, Taro squealing. He's seen a couple of Polizzi autos coming down the street, sirens screaming and scrabbling. I thought maybe the Americans had put the Germans onto our operation, so we got out of there too. Unfortunately, that means nobody was keeping an eye on the front door. Several minutes passed before it became clear that the cops weren't after us. We suspected that 2030 might have been waiting for an opening to move into the bar, so Ludwig and I decided to investigate the premises on foot, while Harrison was still pulling back around. Interviewer: you engaged the entity with your back about a position? We weren't sure if it was there at all at first, but I didn't want to give our skip a chance to dig in, which it would if we lost track of it. I understand. What did you find when you made your reconnaissance? Everything was pretty unremarkable. 2 women at a filthy bar, 4 drunken workers hooting over some card game in the corner. At the center, hunched over a rickety table underneath the shuttered front window, was our KGB man, deep in conversation with Agent Hockaday. Interviewer: Hockaday was reported deceased after the Ulso breach, correct? Killed in the initial breach, and then 2030 dragged his corpse helter-skelter across half of Europe. Interviewer: but why Hockaday? And why is the creature traveling east in the first place? Hell, Gunther, it's your station, you know. You know you would never follow it over the wall. East Germany could give it shelter. The thing might have called up Huckaday's contacts in the Stasi and arranged a defection. Maybe even told them that what it was. If we'd been any slower, 2030 would have been on time and out of our reach. But now, it sat before us. Hands outstretched over the table, just short of Rusky's bare palms. The infection process smelled strongly of oranges. Gave the game away before I saw Hockaday's face. Before I could alert our backup, though, Ludwig misjudged the situation. Misjudged? Ludwig knew a lot of folks at the Oslo site. Maybe he was more shook up than he let on. We'd been on the road continuously since the breach. Maybe 60 hours of pursuit had clouded his judgment. I don't know. And I never got the chance to ask him. For whatever reason, as soon as he'd ID'd the thing, he drew his automatic and started blasting. Huckaday's body was knocked about and his clothes were shredded, but lead rounds don't do much to 2030's semi-skin. The creature pulled itself onto a mass and flung across the room at Ludwig. Looked like a blanket made of oatmeal. Same color, too. Hit Ludwig full on and he went down like a sack of bricks. Meanwhile, I had my hands full keeping our Soviet friend from making a run for the door. Conley and Roberts burst in through the back door just as I got Antonov under control, and Tegeleman followed them with a bar. Headquarters had issued us particular rounds for this skip. Super dense armor piercing. Very experimental. His first two bursts punched right through 2030's mantle and into Ludwig. Ugly, but no helping it. Punctured the skip, bled out and skipped. Punctured, the skip bled out in seconds. The whole fight couldn't have lasted 2 minutes? Interviewer. Let me stop you there. Your report says that you transported a KGB agent over the engagement site and released him without consulting me. I might add. Why did you leave him alive? We interrogated him while Michaels and Stettin were whitewashing, sterilizing the place, and distributing amnestics. Antonov wasn't in any condition to be concealing things. We were well out of it, breathing heavily, eyelids dark blue, all the symptoms of 2030 infection, and the skip's drugs are still thick in the system. I've got to get to Carey, he says first thing, even before we asked him his name. Carey, he says. Carey. Very important. Absolutely critical. Sure enough, there's a photo of a bastard sewn into the seam of his jacket. Carey? John Carey, CIA. CIA spook playing a double game between the Americans and the Ruskies. Helping pillage Site 20 back in 59. Looked like Kremlin wised up to all that, though. Hence, Antonov getting fed to our skip. Interviewer. You believe the meeting was intention to expose Carey to 2030, yes. To get him out of the way without the Americans knowing their cover had been blown. Some KGB bastard must have figured they could have had their cake and eat it too. Close the leak and get their hands on a shape-shifting puddle, grateful for sanctuary in the bargain. All they needed was somebody expendable, like Antonov, to get the creature over the wall and into contact with Carrie. Then they could replace him with the skip and leave the Americans none the wiser. Interviewer: you're a part of the team which brought the Teddy back into containment in the first place, Franklin. So I know you know what it's capable of. How did knowledge of Antonov's mission justify releasing 2030 into the wild with no clear time frame for recovery? Carries a particular case, a nose for our operations, and very few scruples about selling out secrets. The foreign teams have been trying to knock him out for a while now. If getting him meant letting the thing loose, writing off Anatol, Antonov, and who knows how many other good little communists, well, then call it a matter of operational necessity. Interviewer: I expect you to be on hand should the creature attempt to return. In the meantime, Tegelaman will take over pursuit of the remaining Oslo anomalies. F. 2030 won't be gone long. It will come back over the wall when it's worn out its welcome. And I doubt our Russian friends will think much of its gratitude. Excerpt ends. Aha. Alright. Once again, I will be taking a short break to go and grab something to drink. I'll be seeing you guys soon enough. Alright, let's get on through this. Let's see. The next story is Audio of War. Oh my god, it's a short one. Oh. Audio transcript 1035. Welcome to Site 76. It is here in the vast Egyptian desert that we keep many confidential or confiscated anomalous objects we find the two great superpowers the world clutching onto. And it is here that you new recruits have been sent to research and defend these objects from either power. This is impressive. If either side is able to get a hold of these objects, why, it could mean something even worse than nuclear war. We cannot allow this to happen. We took a good look around, gentlemen. It is when these men, or it is with these men, that you will be working for years, perhaps even decades. This is a lifelong job, but a necessary one. The human race needs you to protect it from destroying itself. You are a member of the Foundation now, sworn in to protect anyone and everyone from the threat of a looming apocalypse. Site 76 houses a number of important anomalous objects, including some psychic and mimetic. Therefore, it is important that you all remain focused, because you never know when a mimetic visual might come into your line of sight, or a psychic machine might override your mind. Remember, gentlemen, that this site is top secret, on a need-to-know basis, and anything you encounter here remains here. Even something as insignificant as the type of tree you see outside the window could give away our position to a looming superpower. Now, as with all sites of this nature, it is entirely possible that a breach may occur, requiring the detonation of a 20 megaton nuclear warhead sitting right underneath our very feet. In this case, all personnel are ordered to evacuate the site immediately. In some cases, we may need to detonate the warhead before all personnel have evacuated. You gentlemen have been instructed on this before, and I trust you are willing to sacrifice your lives to contain the monstrosities we hold here. We thank you for joining the ranks of the Foundation, and hope that you have a good day. That is all. And I just put in a little. I'm just gonna put this as a visualizer, so I can possibly break this stream up into multiple parts, or I'll just put it all together as one long video on YouTube. We will see. Alright. Let us see. Back to the hub. Alright, yep, we just did Audio of War. Now for the spy bird. What the spy bird saw. Alright, there we go. Actually, give me a second. I think I'll tweak something a bit more. Yep. I just slightly slowed down the speed the slides go. What the spy bird saw. Top secret pillar garden. Do not copy. Do not take aboard aircraft. Debrief file. Flight Lieutenant redacted. Interview date January 29th, 1963. Incident Area reconnaissance incident recorded February 13th, 1962. Operation Pillar Garden. Document call number UNGOC 17U4.233. Witnessing officer redacted. Stenographer redacted. Redacted. Begin interview. Identification truncated. Back in 1955, Kelly Johnson said he'd sell his soul for 6 more inches of room in the Lockheed U-2. But when the Foundation came calling, they added 6 feet. These planes were 90% engine and 10% camera. But the Skunk Works boys jammed a love seat in there. Anyway, that's just how it is with them. The Foundation, I mean. You can't bring civilians onto missions that never happened. And you especially cannot fit that big camera onto two-seated Dragon Lady. But for the Foundation, the Air Force did both. They trusted the Double Birds to us in 1963, when we deployed it to Pakistan. We'd only been in country for 4 days when they broke the news that our flights were getting passengers. 6 young women in rotation, to be specific. Sure, the extra weight was a bit harder to drive, but I think stewardesses are just what our spy birds were missing. Of course, they didn't tell us why. Gotta say, the girls liven up the joint. The lady wasn't built for 2, and the camera wasn't built for 2 and the full camera, so quarters were nice and tight. These flight suits are hardly revealing, but 15 hours parked 18 inches from a real live woman is a pretty damn superb even if there is an ejection seat in the way. But I digress. The program was hard-edged from the beginning. Cruising over the Ruskies at 70,000 feet, no weapons, no concealment, and no cavalry coming when shit hits the fan. But we had done Korea, Cuba, Edwards, AFB. These instructions hardly bother us. Glide over Russia in a 100-foot wide tin can? Why not? Carry some broad along? Even better. There may have been some dissenting opinions about letting women work for $1 million Perkin-Elmer camera, but the brass trampled all that down. They didn't live with us, eat with us, or talk with us. It was just flying around with a shop front mannequin. There was strictly no in-flight chit-chat, just some designated phrases. Instance November, begin photography. Instance Oscar, prepare to descend. And stuff like that. At the end of each mission, some spooks rushed whichever girl you'd flown with off in a black chopper before the engine ever cooled. All very hush-hush. Secret squirrel bullshit. More so than the rest of what the CIA jackoffs gave us, yep, get up to. More so than the rest of the U2 program, for that matter. These ladies were capital S special. I'm talking about the special talents. The 388th Company, fucking Superman and Captain Marvel too. And every other half-baked idea off Jack Kirby's desk. The Parascientific Combat Team, some jokers responsible for the stalemate on the Yalu and the whole Incheon mess. Do not copy, do not take aboard aircraft. We all used to hear all sorts of things from up top about how they were going to win the war this week. A new bomb or plane or super soldier. They, the Pentagon, had told us that the Sidewinder was a sure thing against the MiG-2, but a third of the things wouldn't even launch. People said the U-2 flew too high to get shot down, but they forgot to tell Lieutenant Powers. So then word went around that these girls could reach through a photograph and touch the other side. I was not tremendously impressed. Call it jaded or cynical or dumb as fuck. Later on, I wish I'd listened. Sometimes on the long flights, up at 75,000 feet, where I ought to have been hearing precisely nothing, I heard conversations in Russian. Right there in the cockpit. Sometimes it was alarms or gunfire or churning machinery. The ladies would chatter or mumble to themselves, and you had to ignore that too. I just kept my eyes on the dials and the plane in the air. Still, every time I heard something, every time it got weird up there, I got the feeling I hadn't felt since Edwards AFB, when we were taking the X-15 up to space. When your engines kick you in the parts with 60,000 pounds of thrust, you know you're doing something Mother Nature did not intend for you to do. Up over Russia, with these silent ladies, I felt it again. Like I had peeked behind a curtain, and some big ugly thing had noticed me on the other side. I still remember the last day of the program. Every moment of it. 13 miles over Leningrad, I heard the little pop, like a jar opening. Looked over my shoulder, and the cargo, Insurance September was her designation, had her arm jammed halfway into the loading aperture of the main cam, shoulder deep in what is supposed to be a 6-inch loading slot. Orders here were clear. Ignore everything. Fly the plane. Some Rusky is shouting right behind me, angry voice echoing and distorted. Ignore everything. Finally, September pulled her arm out from the possible space with an honest-to-God briefcase in her hand. Her knuckles scratched to hell and white from squeezing. A lesser man might have crashed from pure shock. But I had said to myself, ignore it. Fly. The plane. The shouting cut off like a switch had been flicked. She's laughing, smiling, 1,000 times more expressive than I'd ever seen her. Seen any of them. Honestly, it kind of shook me. Fly the plane. Ignore everything. I didn't say a word as we flew the 5 hours back home. Never saw September again after we landed. The spooks hustled her off, and that was that. No more girls, no more flights, no more sunny Pakistan. But I remember what she said when we had touched down. Every word of it. You could hear the crazy, hear the loss. She said, I did real good today. They won't be mad anymore. They'll let me see my iris again. Lots of stuff like that. Me? I just ignored it, kept flying the plane. There's something in her voice. It's like, on all those flights I've been pushing the envelope, and that was bad enough. But September, she lived clear on the other side. After a couple more days, we're shipped back to Germany. We never learned where our passengers ended up. I still don't know. I still don't know who those girls were. I don't want to know. Never learning their names made it easier. Still, I came back to it every once in a while. Whoever she was, I hope things turned out alright. For her, and for Iris. End transcript. File number redacted, redacted. Receiving officer redacted. Top secret, Pillar Garden. Do not copy. Do not take aboard aircraft. Alright. And that was what the spy bird saw. And as always, I'll be taking a short break and then continue on with another story. This one will be They Leave Us with a Shaken Earth. Until then, I'll be silent. Alright, time to move on to They Will Leave Us with a Shaken Earth. Oops, let me just bring up the slideshow again. Alright. They Will Leave Us with a Shaken Earth. From Bernard Fall's article, New Technology and a Familiar Strategy in Vietnam, published on December 28, 1966. A desperate fight broke out on the far side of McNamara's Plaza just as I sat down to interview General Roland. Even at a distance, we could hear the rattling of machine gun fire flare up before being drowned out by nearby batteries of heavy guns, exploding artillery shells echoing through the hazy morning, rattling out all the windows in downtown Saigon, but failing to faze my impeccably uniformed host. General Roland is part of the new breed of American fighting men, a veteran of Korea tapped to oversee one of the most sensitive aspects of Lyndon Johnson's escalation. Big, tall, he carried himself with a brusque, almost rambunctious air, surface informality concealing a quick mind and a deep belief in the inevitability of American success. If you can just get their hands on the right tools. We had met to discuss the latest generation of special talents soldiers whose recent spectacular debut was at the center of America's newest push to bring some resolution to the 19-year Indochina War. The recent hostilities, a large Viet Cong raid on the outer defense of the city, were an unscheduled backdrop to the meeting, but the general refused to be deterred by the percussive interruptions and seized on one particularly significant blast as fuel for attention. All that stuff you hear out there, he said, gesturing expensively towards the distant blast, is ours. Our planes find every Viet gun that gets in within 20 miles of Saigon and smash it. Meanwhile, our heavy artillery puts up more firepower per square mile than any other army in history. We have complete weapons dominance over the Viet Minh. He paused, rubbing his knuckle on the desk. What we haven't had is a certified way to chase down the Viets in their holes and through the jungles. At least, till now. The general's confidence was not wholly persuasive. Previous administrations have made similar strident announcements of similarly decisive breakthroughs. Not 2 years previously, large batches of ultra-modern auto defoliants intended to destroy the enemy's jungle concealment had been deployed in tremendous concentrations in order to create a fire break around Vietnamese capital. The resulting strip of desolation, 8 miles across and almost 40 long, bears the name of McNamara's Plaza in dubious tribute to its primogenitor. I believe I said that. Primogenitor? As every earlier wonder weapon promised to end the threat of Viet Cong tunnel expansion complexes. Much has made of an array of specially constructed stakes, which, when activated, send massive waves of vibrations through the ground in order to shake any concealed excavations to pieces. The system proved far more efficient at splintering the concrete roads on which Western forces depended on collapsing the enemy's deep tunnels. General Roland shook off comparisons to earlier experiments irritably. Everything you're talking about comes from the same period, the same mindset, a failed mindset that the Army has put behind it. Today, our operatives are governed by our mobility, a mobility which the enemy totally lacks. 11 years ago, the French had 167 aircraft to serve the needs of all of Indochina. Today, we send out that many planes on a single mission, he said, warming to his theme. Our air cavalry responds to communist incursions before they can withdraw, and the boys and special talents predict those incursions more reliably than ever before. Details regarding the Special Talent Unit, or Spectrals, are exceedingly difficult to come by, but any old Indochina head knows that in mentioning only their intelligence functions, that the general far understates the extent of their activities in the field. No doubt the men of the 388th Independent Special Company would not recognize the character of these operations in that limited description. The special talents give us an incredibly precision, Roland continues, and what that precision means for the people of Vietnam is security, plain and simple. Security from communist intimidation, security from communist extortion. Letter from Berlin Father to his wife, February 11th, 1967. My beloved Dorothy, there is a whole new war here, a new type of war, industrial and implacable. The American war machine has become unrecognizable. Out in the jungle, clawed women hunt the Viet Cong through their own flat tunnels for hours before emerging. Airborne commandos on interdictory patrols carry weapons which calcify their targets in the blink of an eye. Villagers suspect of sheltering the enemy are plastered in napalm that collect itself into a moving mass of fire and waits for survivors to emerge from cover before firing back into life. The administration claims that such special talents represent a natural progression of any known science are utterly false. Perhaps no explanation of these things is possible. Our government has chosen to fight the beliefs of a whole people with incomprehensible violence because they are totally unable to offer an alternative to communism but poverty and corruption. Everywhere, the absolute contempt of the Saigon cliché for the people of Vietnam is clear. For 12 years, I have studied the conflict of Vietnam and written and warned. I fear there is nothing more I can do here, except come home and tell the world what they have done. I do not know if they will allow me. Give my love to our daughters. You mean the world to me. I'll be with you soon. B.F. Arnold Fall disappeared on February 21st, 1967, while on patrol with a company of Marines in the war-torn region of Vietnam, known as the Street of Joy, without joy. The fate of his final letter is unknown. Alright. That was the end of that tale. They will leave us with a shaken earth, I should say. Is this tale that I just read. Next up will be the final tale of this canon, and that tale is The End of History, 11/9/1989. But once again, I'll be taking a short break, and I'll be seeing you soon. Alright, it's time to finish off this canon with the end of history. Let's do this. November 19th, 1989, East Berlin. The last time it'll ever be called that. At a press conference announcing new, more liberal travel regulations for the German Democratic Republic, unprepared spokesperson Peter Skobowski inadvertently declares that the Berlin Wall will be open for transit immediately. 6 hours later, there's a junction across the city at Muncie, heard from the west without permission or plan. Crowds migrate in the streets, cheering, drinking, and singing. For so long, the two halves of one people have longed to know one another. Now that call is answered in a burst of passion that sweeps the world. Finally. Finally. For all the fuss about parascience, the Cold War ended pretty much as it was supposed to. A 10-year war in Afghanistan gnawed away at the Soviet Union from the inside. Economic stagnation wiped out what little tolerance for repression remained in the communist bloc. Across a dozen countries, people took to the streets, a dozen revolutionaries signaling what would famously be called the end of history. Issues and ideologies which seemed so crucial in the heat of past decades vanished in moments. In retrospect, the passions which sent 500,000 Americans to Vietnam had waned long before the first crack appeared in the Berlin Wall. Within a decade of the end, communism was punchline, and what Cold Warriors remained were no more than relics of a quaint and confusing age. One last great espionage moment took place far from the point of view. Was that their great rival, the American states had no desire to carry on the expansive work of massive parascientific containment, and the leaders of the new Russian Federation had no such capabilities. After erroneous negotiations, the Foundation returned to most old sites and slumbering facilities, long occupied by forces of the two great combatants. The jailers recovered their wayward charges. Their long exile was over. The jailers recovered their wayward charges. The long exile was over. There was a time of joyous reunification. Amidst the swirling clouds of Berlin, families came together, often for the first time. Brothers embraced sisters they had never met, while children grown into unrecognizable adults searched out parents who were only memories. 100 miles of concrete wall and 40 years of separation had not sundered the bonds of family and kinship. No longer needed, the Cold War passed into the dustbin of history. Around the Brandenburg Gate, some of the largest crowds gather. Already, the wall woodpeckers have begun chipping away at the once fearsome barrier, and by morning, almost everybody and their aunt will have peace. Two figures, a man and a woman, slip away from the revelry unannounced. Strangers, but who was a stranger on this singular night? Darting among the nearest corner, they fell into a drunken embrace, swept up in a haze of alcohol and hormones. The man does not notice the wafting smell of citrus, and remains oblivious to the sudden sharpening of his consort's features as he prepares to consume him. Ensnared and now sedated by his not quite human companion, the luckless man slipped into unconsciousness. He has not seen a four-masked man who rush out of the practice to subdue the shapeshifter, and does not remember the otherwise unremarkable Pavetsy van into which they wrestle her. But he lives to see the first day in a new Deutschland. A white and green police van rolls down the quiet streets of West Berlin in the early mornings, far from the pandemonium of the western border. In the reinforced rear compartment, something less than human struggles against the specially prepared constraints to no avail. If its head were not locked into an iron cage, it would glare at the gray-haired agent who sits across from it. The agent who had hunted it relentlessly for so long, since Berlin, through 100 of the cities, helpless with its semi-skin locked and pheromone pods plunged. The creature settled for a blistering stream of multilingual obscenity. Yell as you please, 2030, laughed Agent Franklin. Now, little man, I told you I'd be waiting. Yell all you please. And that is showed up and watched the stream. And next week I'll be moving on to a new canon. Although I have yet to quite decide which one I want to do, because there's so many good ones. Like, the Broken Masquerade. There's the latest one, Aces and Eights. The whole Western one, that seems really interesting. The Bellerverse. I'd love to sink my hands into that. So many. I'll only be doing one at a time for now, just to keep things from getting too confusing. But once again, I'd like to thank you all for showing up and watching this. And have a good week.